Welcome, I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and I have the distinct honor and pleasure of having a conversation with not only your sheriff and my sheriff, but a friend also, Jeff Long. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Mayor. Good to see you again. Always look forward to doing this with you.
I thought today we'd spend a little bit of time just talking about all the different activities that are going on in Williamson County with your department. It just seems like it's just never ending.
Well, it is never ending the way the community is growing, and you know that more than anybody. It's growing so fast. Trying to keep up with it and keep up with all the needs and all the calls, all the traffic and everything, our schools. It's a big challenge right now.
You know, Jeff, when you think about the sheriff department, which I've always thought that the general public, the 210,000 people that live in Williamson County for the most part knows the term the sheriff. They don't always know what a county executive or county mayor is. There's still some dispute about the property assessor and the trustees and all of the different functions that we have in the world that we live in. But in order for the sheriff to be effective and have that good governance and providing safety and providing the security that every community enjoys, you got to have good men and women.
Well, we do, and we're so blessed, to be honest with you. Our staff is just the top. I told somebody not long ago I'd put them up against any agency anywhere in the nation. I'm so proud of them. We have young staff who are really energetic about serving their community. You know, about everybody that you interview on application to hire, that's one of the main things they say. You ask them why they want to get into police work, especially right now with the world looking at police like they do, and they say because they want to make it a better place and they want to serve their community, and I think that's admirable for all of them to do that.
Recently we took a tour through the jail, the actual facility, which is slowly approaching 30 years. You and I kind of remember when it was built, and that's a whole different show and discussion we can have. But I was really taken back by the youth and how you're hiring people that've got college degrees working over in the jail, and that's just the process you hire people at.
Well, we've strived for that. We've strived for better quality of employee. We're hiring a lot with degrees. We've got some with masters, one with a doctorate degree. And these younger people want to start early in their career, and they want somewhere to start. And we start them, of course, in the jail. That's where we put people for a couple of reasons. One is I feel like it's a good opportunity for them to meet the defendant in a controlled environment before they meet them out on the road, have to deal with them. But also, honestly, it gives us an opportunity to evaluate that employee, to make sure that's what we want out in our community. That's the person we want representing us, dealing with our public. And I'm very proud of them, and I encourage every one of them to seek more education, even if they haven't completed their degree when we hire them. When I interview them, I stress to them that there's no reason they shouldn't go on and get that degree while they work for us.
Things have changed. The balancing has changed in the years that you and I have been around between the male and the female population. There was a time we only thought of jails that housed, and taxpayers pay for this, both the state and the feds, but a lot of local funds going into our incarceration, the upkeep on the facility, the men and women that actually provide the job on a day-to-day basis. Not your oversight, Mike's oversight, but I'm just taken back by the degree of prisoners we see today as opposed to, say, just 10 short years ago.
Oh, it's all the difference in the world, and as we grow, it's even going to increase more. And you know, the state does pay a certain amount on state inmates. However, it's not enough to cover actually what the cost is. If you figure in the manpower cost and food and everything, you recoup part of it, but not enough. So most of that burden comes on the county to pay for that. But our jail, as you said, is about 30-year-old. When the sheriff's office moved out there, I think they've told me they have between 70 and 75 employees for that facility. We now have over 315 or 20. So a lot of difference in the need now than then. And I've told everybody We think we run a structured jail. We feel like you need to structure it for the inmates to keep them occupied, keep them having something to do, not let them run the facility. We actually run the facility. And we've had good results with that, and I'm very proud of our staff, the way that they treat the inmates and the way that they operate the operation of it.
I could only imagine inside your head and your body over the last many years that you've been in the law enforcement community, the changes that you have seen. But I'm just taken back by all the different programs that our community, our county offers. Mm-hmm. I remember just a few short years ago, we got into the SROs, mm-hmm. That we're now offering protection, and it's really more than just protection. Those men and women in every single school that we've got in Williamson County, for those students to come up to and begin a discussion. And I think 20 years from now, long after you and I have hung up our cleats, a lot of those young people that those SRO officers have had an influence on, that they all want to be into this area. And of course, the latest one that everyone is talking about, Williamson County Sheriff's Department is now in the law enforcement division of traffic control.
Absolutely. Let me say something about the SROs real quick. I need to tell the public in particular, and I need to thank you and Dr. Mike Looney. We had our SROs in our middle schools and our high schools, and after the Sandy Hook elementary school shooting, nobody had ever thought about an elementary school being involved in a shooting situation until that incident. And I think the public needs to know that weekend after the Sandy Hook incident, Dr. Looney and you and I began conversations about the need to go ahead and put them in the elementary schools, and that was the right thing to do. And it didn't take us very long, if you really think about it, to get that done. And I applaud you and Dr. Looney and the commission in particular for stepping up and funding that. And it just makes our whole process for the kids in school to be able to concentrate on studying and doing their schoolwork and feeling safe in that school. Now to traffic. Traffic has not improved very much. Traffic's really a problem here in our community, as everybody knows. And, you got to remember, I think most of the general public forgets, we're a thoroughfare going to Nashville, going back through to go home to different southern counties, and you're going to have an additional population probably of about 75 to 100,000 extra people a day just traveling through. And with that, you're going to have traffic issues. You're going to have wrecks, and that's probably, we're responding to those more and more and more. And because of that, we asked the commission this last year, and with their graciousness approved for us to have a traffic unit. And so we have people now being trained to do accident reconstruction, do different types of traffic enforcement. We were just recently given 2 motorcycles by Harley Davidson of Cool Springs. They've leased them to us for $1 a year, and with the option of turning them in and getting new ones every year. So, our own community comes to help. And that's how Harley Davidson did. They saw the need and saw that we needed those for the enforcement. And that's why we have a great community here and a great place to live and work in Williamson County, is because we have people who live here, who have businesses here, want to step up and help, and they gave us those 2 motorcycles.
Well, and I can't help but say thank you to Harley Davidson for that, the huge investment.
Oh, yeah.
But I also am amazed at a little stretch of road that is now called an interstate called 840.
Oh.
I just am amazed that they really need to put an NASCAR sign out there and just call it a road course. From about the time you, if you're coming from the Memphis side, about the time you roll in from Dixon County you go to Rutherford County, that's your jurisdiction.
Well, it is, and you've heard me say the 840 is my nemesis. That, of course, Williamson County has the largest amount of 840 of any county involved, so naturally we have the most wrecks on it. But I don't think people really realize how bad it is. We're out there 3 and 4 times average a day working serious accidents. Speed is a lot of the problem. Believe it or not, and I didn't even know a motorcycle would go this fast. We had a car the other day, timed a motorcycle out there, radar, 200 mile an hour.
Oh my!
And I didn't even know a motorcycle would go. So we
Was
made
there
a call.
anybody on it?
Yeah, there was somebody on it at that time. I don't know how long he stayed on it, but of course we didn't even try to catch it. But we called to ask if a motorcycle would go that fast, and we learned there's only one or two types of bikes that are manufactured that will go that fast.
200 miles an hour.
200 mile an hour on a motorcycle.
Well, in all due respect to the state, when they put in 840, then it was a state route. Now it's a interstate. Sometimes those connection points on those bridges and roads don't meet up, and I would not want to be an individual in a car, much less a motorcycle hitting 200 miles an hour.
Well, I wouldn't either, and that's the biggest complaint we hear from the general public traveling that road is the bridges, where you'll hit it as you come up and also as you go off the bridge, and it is a little rough. People just need to take time and slow down a little bit, and you're going to get there. Just take your time and slow down.
And another factor that you have to take consideration, and you went through it hurriedly, but it's true that 840 is the largest section, and other than one little bitty piece there in Thompson Station, it's all in the unincorporated area, which puts additional strain. When we have trucks, and trucks take that route coming up from 65, 24, actually even around to I-40, take it all the way around to bypass the Nashville market. When they have an accident, when they turn over, then it's your department. It's, yes, you can call the state troopers, but there's not a lot of state troopers across the area. Now, I know the state's getting ready to hire several new ones, but it takes a while for them to be trained, and most of that falls on the back of your men and women, plus it falls on the backs of our emergency management and our volunteers that serve out in the Paytonsville area and the College Grove area and the rescue squad areas that have to respond to those different turnovers. And as time goes on, we're going to have more and more of them, and it's an issue we have to deal with.
Well, that's true, and it's not as you said, it's a time issue. If you have a truck that turns over, you're talking about most of the day out there directing traffic, responding, and tying up personnel and all of that. So that's one reason we wanted to start our traffic unit. Before, we were having to pull cars out of the zones they're assigned to, protecting homes and answering calls and things, to go do that and be there for a day and not be able to cover the community. So with the traffic unit, we're now assigning those cars to go do it, not having to take our zone cars out. But still, with volunteer firefighters, the rescue squad, EMA, us, Highway Patrol, whoever's out there, I mean, it's a manpower issue.
Sheriff, when you think about the role, it goes back to the earlier remarks that I made about the sheriff and in working with our law enforcement community in our cities, oftentimes there's a fine line. We talk about jails oftentimes. When the cities arrest someone, when the law enforcement personnel inside the cities, where you're talking about Franklin or Brentwood or any of the other municipalities, and they're booked, they're brought to the jail. We only have one jail, and you have to oversee that. And as we have that population growth that we have, a lot of people know and understand that in the cities, they don't necessarily fund schools, but it's the same mechanics that occur within the cities when law enforcement is arresting people, they're going to jail. It's your responsibility.
Absolutely, and a lot of people don't understand that. They think there are jails throughout the county, but we are the only jail, and the officers bring them and drop them to us, and then we're responsible for them at that point. Medical costs, feeding them, anything that comes up, the county pays that amount. And some inequity of that, I think, is that if a city department, say, cites that person or issues some kind of a monetary amount on a fine or something, that goes to the city, it doesn't go to the county. Maybe some of that money needs to go to help pay for the cost of that inmate. That's something we probably need to get the state legislature to look at. But just so people will know, the jail, by statutory responsibility, is the responsibility of the sheriff.
And other areas are courtroom. Courthouse, protection of our judges, getting those prisoners to and from. That falls on squarely on your shoulders, and that's a big responsibility.
Well, and it's getting bigger. Our court dockets, as you've heard, are just exploding. And trying to transport inmates from our jail to the courthouse downtown is a never-ending process. We're doing it all day long up until the night. And more numbers are going, and trying to keep those courts secure, which you've got to do. And as we spread out our court system, excuse me, as we spread out our court system, more and more deputies are needed to provide that security in those different facilities. I guess I need to say, a lot of people don't think about it. You know, you've got the courthouse downtown, the old historic courthouse. We're having court in it. We're having court in the Judicial Center, which you have general sessions courts. You have 2 of those, and then you have circuit courts where you have 4 up there. And then also, Judge Guffey has juvenile court out by the jail. So you've got that court also. A lot of people don't realize that the courts are spread the way they are.
Well, and I don't care who you are as far as the judge. You want to know that the facility, those men and women that you have stationed, positioned, working inside with those judges, it has to be safe and secure. Many issues can erupt. Just as most of us know, domestic violence is an issue that we deal with, and when men and women come up on those in our community, you never know what to expect. That same thing, the same identical thing can carry over into our court system.
Well, and it has. We've had issues in the courtroom from domestics. We've also had them wait till they got outside the checkpoint at the Judicial Center on the front steps, start fighting there, and we have to go out and intercede. So domestics is one of those really difficult cases that any law enforcement will tell you is the most dangerous case that we probably work. And it seems like the domestic cases, the reports of them in our community are growing every day. That's probably our number one call for response in the community is domestics lately. So it's just a hot button issue for the community and for us because of the safety of the officer. You know, you get there and you got one mad at the other, and if they tried to intercede, sooner or later they may both turn on you, and the officers have to be very, very careful how they handle those situations.
Let's kind of shift our attention to what's going on in Nashville. I know you spend an enormous amount of time communicating with your other sheriff, your counterparts, law enforcement, the chiefs, all up in Nashville, on the horizon. As our community grows, and we're growing, several hundred people a day. We've kind of touched on the school situation. We've touched on the traffic situation. What's out there in the next 5 years that really gives you a lot of heartburn and keeps you up at night about things that need to change? But oftentimes it's not just about money, but more and large, most everything we do is about money.
Well, I think the thing that there are a couple of things we have to think about. I tell people every time I go out and speak how fortunate we are and how blessed we are to get to live in this county and to work here. Our crime rate is really low in our area. You look on television in Nashville, and this is not to talk about Nashville, but you look on television, there's murders every night, every day, and that's not but 15 miles up the road. Our community, as it expands toward Brentwood and towards Nashville, I think it's going to be a challenge for law enforcement in the future to make sure that barrier is there for Williamson County to where we don't allow that crime to come across our jurisdiction. That's going to be a challenge as the two communities meet even more. So that is. Now, with our economic level in our community, we're seeing a rise in the frauds and in the scams and things like that. And also forensics for computers and things. So those computer crimes, fraud, scams are going to be a challenge for law enforcement in the next few years. White collar type crime.
And do you see that's unique to Williamson County, or is that a trend that's going on all across the state?
It's all over the state. I talk to the different sheriffs, different chiefs, and we talk about it. We've tried to address part of it in the legislature, and it's just a thing where you've got people who are calling on the telephone about jury scams, about TVA, about Middle Tennessee Electric, about the IRS. I mean, there's all different various types, and people just doesn't stop and think, could this be a scam before they go get a card at Kroger or something to send in and send them the number off.
Let's catch your breath a little bit, but I am amazed a year or so ago that I called you a friend of mine who's very intelligent, worked in the medical field, that actually got that phone call that you're talking about, went down to the local Kroger's, got a card or got Western Union or something. I don't remember the full details of it. But oftentimes they do catch you with these phone calls, and they're mighty convincing salespeople.
Oh, they are, and they tell you you're going to go to jail if you don't send them the money. And then now there's one, has been going around, still is, where it'll be a young person on the phone and they're just screaming, talking about they've been kidnapped and it's your granddaughter or your grandson, and telling you, you know, they need you to send the money to get them loose. And it's really, really convincing for a person, especially an elderly person, to believe that and to go ahead. And we had one lady, I remember, that lost $30,000 based off of that, and was sending another one through the mail. And luckily, we were able to intercede that last transaction and caught the money in Chicago, Illinois, of all places, going to an individual who was going to further it on, and we were able to recoup her money and get it back for her.
Speaking about our elderly population, you do have a program that you encourage people to call in, sign in, whatever the mechanics are, so that your department can check on them on a daily, weekly basis.
Well, and that's probably one of the most gratifying programs that we have, I think. It's a senior assurance program. And yes, if somebody is a senior and they don't have, and not only senior, we'll do it for anybody. If you don't have a loved one in the community to check on you on a regular basis, we have volunteers who will call and check on those individuals and make sure they're okay. If we can't get them on the phone, we have information about their doctors and such. We'll call and see if they're at a doctor appointment or something, and then eventually, if we can't get in touch with them, we have authorization through them to check on them at their home, and we'll go into the house and check on them there. And it's just very rewarding, not only for the person who's getting the call, but the people, the volunteers who make the calls. We have a luncheon for them twice a year and get the two groups together and just see them interact, and the appreciation of the people who are being called. It's just very, very rewarding.
How does one get a hold of it? Just call the office?
They can call our office and ask for Vicki Pedrick, who is my administrative assistant. Vicki will get them signed up, and Dr. Gary Owen helps coordinate that program with Miss Annie, his wife, and they have volunteered for us on about every program we've had, and they coordinate getting the volunteers, getting them set up, and we'd love to have volunteers or anybody that needs someone watched after. If you'll call and talk to Vicki, she'll get you signed up.
Let's talk about some of those crimes that are out there that the general public oftentimes reads about them on the front page of the paper. Are they a problem in Williamson County? I'm sure to some degree. We've got about 5 minutes left, and we can't touch all of them. But when I think about front page of stories, meth.
Yeah.
Still a problem in Williamson County?
Not as bad as it was. We did have a meth problem pretty bad there for a while. The lab portion of meth, making the production of methamphetamine, when the legislature changed trying to limit the amount of pseudoephedrine, that helped with some of it. We do still have meth. Most of our meth is crystal meth coming out of Mexico that's shipped in. We do get meth on a regular basis, but not anything like what it was. Our main problem right now, of course, is opioid and heroin. The opioid abuse is nationwide. Pills are way too easy to get a hold of, and then because of the craving after the pills, they go to heroin.
Sex trafficking.
It's everywhere in the world, even here in Williamson County. We have had some cases. Brentwood's made some, Franklin's made some. We've made some cases out of our local motels here where people from outside the area, one in particular brought a 13-year-old girl out of Dallas, Texas, held her as more or less a prisoner in the motel, and was slaving her out of a motel, and we were able to get that one and get interceded into it.
Drugs, you mentioned opium and heroin, other. There's a new drug that I read about. I can't even.
Fentanyl.
Thank you.
Fentanyl is our biggest concern and safety issue. Fentanyl is the big new drug that's being laced with everything else with heroin or whatever. And fentanyl also is by itself. Fentanyl is normally a painkiller for cancer type treatment, very, very strong. The bad thing about fentanyl is we're seeing cases of it where it's 100% pure fentanyl. And if you get 3 grains so of fentanyl, just little like salt grains, and it absorbs into your skin, it can cause you to overdose and die. So our drug investigators are having to be very, very careful when they go and serve a search warrant or make an arrest with somebody that might have fentanyl. They're having to take all kinds of safety to be sure that they don't get that into their system to where they actually overdose trying to package that drug up and get it to the lab.
Last couple of minutes, traffic stops, checks. We hear those advertised a lot of times on the radio or in the conversations I hear in the community. Why advertise?
Well, first of all, we're required by law to do it. The legislature passed a law that requires you to publish when you're going to do sobriety checkpoints and safety checkpoints. And so we do it, and we put them on our Facebook page, we put them in the paper, we put them on the radio, and allow people to know and to educate the public. Don't get out and drive and drink. Don't get out and be unsafe in a car. And one of the big issues we're seeing, of course, is people texting on the phone.
That's where I was going next.
You know, it's so dangerous, and I know it's easy to do that, but we're asking the people, please just wait about answering your phone or talking or texting until you get an opportunity to move over on the side of the road.
It's not just children texting.
Oh, no, it's everybody. We did a survey at Columbia Avenue and Mac Hatcher the other day, just sort of seeing how many were texting as they come through the red light. 8 out of 10 cars were texting as they came through the red light.
I believe, and I may be wrong, but I was coming from the Ag Park here recently, and atop of the bridge, the new bridge that was built about 2 years ago now, I saw a state trooper looking down on the traffic on 65. I really do believe he was seeing who was texting.
Well, that's what they are doing. They're doing that in the radio in another car up front of who's violating the law to stop. Also, they have a tractor trailer truck that they're using to enforce that, and we just got a tractor trailer truck that was donated to the sheriff's office, and I can promise you that'll be an enforcement tool we'll be using on writing citations for texting and driving.
Sheriff, we got about 30 seconds left. I'm sure I have overlooked something. We covered a lot of ground, and I thank you for hurriedly going through that. What have I overlooked you want to touch base on?
Well, one of the things that we're also trying to do is mental health has come an issue in law enforcement because the mental health facilities have been underfunded and closed at the state level. Unfortunately, law enforcement is catching those mental health patients. They're getting into the justice system and being housed at the jail. We're trying to start a mental health program with Judge Taylor to try to divert those people out of the criminal court and get them the mental health they need. Also, we're starting other programs about educational programs, re-entry programs back into the community. We're starting drug treatment programs in the jail. You got your drug courts and things like that. This is a shorter program while we can deal with them while they're locked up in the facility, and just trying to turn lives around and make them productive in their community.
Our sheriff is one busy man. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for letting me.
I'm Rogers Anderson. See you around the county at the next show.